Hey, what's up? This is Chosen. Hope you're having a fantastic day. This is going to be a Raid Shadow Legends video. I am here on the test server where I have an opportunity to build and test and go over Jetni the Giant, who is a very important champion right now because we are going to be getting the fragment events starting in just a few days. So I have not watched what other people are saying yet. I haven't looked around the community. I'm going to give you my personal unbiased thoughts of what I think so far, having tried a few different builds and running around testing her in different scenarios, and give you what I think without taking into consideration what other people think. And then as the week evolves, we'll get more of a consensus opinion, but I want to get my opinion out there before I talk with others, and then we'll see how I end up comparing, if I'm a little bit more high on her or a little bit more down on her, and we'll be able to tell as we evolve closer to the fragments starting here on Thursday. So I'm going to let you know my full thoughts on Jetni here in this video. Let's get into it. Alrighty, now the first thing we need to look at when we are assessing the fragment event starting for Jetni is she is a tandem champion that pairs with somebody named Allsgore Crimson Helm. Now, I thought that Allsgore was going to be a Void Legendary pair, like a new Void Legendary, but Plarium ended up going a different direction with the Void Legendary that they released with this patch, and Cold Brew actually has a really good article breaking down the new Void Lego on the site. And I'll try to remember to link to that down below. But yeah, Cold Brew put this together, a full analysis if you are looking for some opinions on the new Void Lego Razer Iron Gut, but it does not have any relevance to the actual fragment event because they went with a Spirit and a Force Affinity Champion on the new tandem coming to Raid. And now that we can finally get a look at Allsgore, I mean, he looks interesting. I don't think he brings anything super special to the game or anything outlandishly amazing. And I also don't think he's trash. I mean, he's got an ability here similar to Helicath and Roshkar the Tower, where you get block damage on an AoE on a 4-turn cooldown, and he also gets a heal with it. Has a passive where he can place decreased speed, which is super nice when he gets attacked. It's just kind of like a passive debuff placement. Great for somewhere like the Iron Twins, obviously. And he does scale with HP, so he's going to be a little bit more tanky, but his base HP is a little bit low. I would have liked to see this be around like 23k at least, but anyway, he's going to be a sturdy utility, kind of half utility, half damage dealer, healer with some block damage utility to unlock some certain compositions. AoE buff strip, something similar to like Iron Priest Brogni. Yeah, so really a solid champion, but bringing nothing special to Raid. I don't see anything outlandish coming from him. But I will say it is super nice that if they are a tandem, he is going to remove all buffs from all enemies, even if he lands a weak hit. So that is kind of a cool tandem ability for sure. And you get some heals and some sustain, and he has self-sustain. Maybe he could like solo some content because he's an HP scaling champion with the self-heal here and buff manipulation. So definitely interesting. I don't think some like god tier game-changing champion though. And then for Jetni, the fragment champion starting on Thursday. So Jetni is going to be an attack champion. You've got a little bit of a squishy base stat here with the 15k base HP and the 960 defense. So definitely a damage dealer who's going to need to crank out damage in order to be a highly valuable champion. Now, it is really cool that we get some utility. We get the stun on the A1 and the defense break on the A2, and we also get something that is really becoming meta within the game of DPSers, and that is just inherent ignore defense as part of your kit. So very cool that A2 has that, and the cooldown of 3 turns right there. And then also something that is part of the meta is self-sustain, or like self-buffing DPSers that get extra turns. So she does have the ability to place the crit rate and the crit damage, and then will also get that extra turn if it's a tandem ability. And it's not just a flat out waste even without the tandem. She does do the AoE here on the A3 even without the tandem, and then you're gonna get a bonus versus shields, which are very popular in PvP and all of that. So as long as she hits super well, she should be mostly fine. So what I did is I got her in a pretty glassed out build, nothing super insane unattainable, but definitely solid. We've got the 320% crit damage and the almost 6,500 attack. So a pretty realistic high nuke build, and something, you know, something similar to stats that the kind of like average end game player is going to be able to attain, and we can kind of see how her damage compares to some of the other people in the game. So what I ended up doing was putting her in a team here, and this is also cool because you can see her in action. She is definitely a big, giant champion here in the Barbarians faction. So right there, you can see the AoEs between the double hitter doing about 100k, and then Baron coming in and slapping for like 190. So what I've been able to see in my testing is that her multipliers are average for a damage viewer. I don't think she's going to be one of the lowest damage viewers, but I think she is going to be like nowhere near the top 15. You can kind of see during the video some of her attacks and how they compare to someone like Baron. There you go, the 2 attacks adding up for like 75, 80, and then Baron comes in hitting for almost 200k. So like in terms of stats, they're probably decently comparable here. And what I'm finding is Baron is doing like double the damage output of Jetni here, just like attacking a bunch of void enemies and stuff. But it's important to note that Jetni does have some utility, is going to be having the inherent ignore defense, is going to be placing defense break, has a multi-hitter A1 that is going to be placing stun and giving you a little bit of CC, and also has a tandem ability. So I don't think she's going to be a top 15 nuker, but I do think she's going to be a utility damage dealer within the game. So it's going to depend on each person's account. Like, do you have 3 or 4 top 20 damage dealers? If you do, you're probably not going to be using Jetni in that context. Are you a new player who's only been playing for 3 or 4 months and you don't have any good DPSers? Or at least you should want like at least 3 or 4 of them for like tag team arena and different options in live arena and all of that. So it's going to depend on the player, but I don't think Jetni is going to be DPS meta with your champions like Leorius and Harima and Rhodos and Candrafon and Baron and Trunda and like the different ones that you see kind of running around, the different like 15 to 20 DPSers you'll see people picking in the live arena. I don't think Jetni is going to slide into that role, but I think she'll be just kind of one of those average damage dealers with utility. So here we are, we're coming up to the final stages of the run, and you'll be able to see how like how the damage output compared here. There you saw Baron doing like 60k with his A1, and Jetni's a double hitter doing about 40k, and the stats end up being with Baron at about 2.7 and Jetni at about 1.9. Now Baron is a big hitter and a big raw damage dealer, so not surprising that Jetni is behind Baron, coming in around 1.9 compared to Baron's 1.7, and that's pretty consistent with the testing that I was getting on all of the different runs that I was doing. You usually have her doing about 2/3 as much as someone like Baron, and I tried other nukers as well, and it was about similar results. So let's go ahead and pull up the Fusion and Fragment event champions tier list that we have over on the site, and I will show you my initial placements after talking with some people in the team and stuff that we have here, trying to get her on the list and at least get an initial placement. I am going with right here is Jetni down in this row. Now, full disclosure, within the next week or two, she could slide up a little bit or she could slide down a little bit. Like I said, I'm getting my thoughts out there initially, and then I'm going to touch base with more and more people and try to refine my opinions as we kind of learn more and get more testing done. But I like to give you information as soon as I can here on the channel to keep you in the loop. And like, here's the thing. So every champion that they do, they can't have them be a top 5 champion. That would just be, that would make champions irrelevant too fast. And they've got to release champions on like a wide spectrum. I get that. I think she could use a little bit of love. I think she strikes this weird middle point where like, she's not a support champion. She's not a utility champion. She needs a tandem to really unlock her full power, and she doesn't do anything special. Like there is no like knee shock utility coming to the game. There's no support godliness like Python and Mighty Uko. There's no blocking a revive like Foley. There just really isn't that like push to the next level that would make her super sought after. You get like the insanely valuable passive and super unique stuff that Razelvarg does. There really isn't any of that coming from Jetni. She's just a decent hybrid damage dealer. And the thing with damage dealers is that's the least numerically used role in the game. Like when you're doing faction wars, you'll typically have 3 or 4 support champions and 1 or 2 DPSers. If you're doing the live arena, you'll usually have, well, live arena is different, but if you're fighting in the arena, you have 4 champions, you'll usually have 3 support champions and 1 DPS. If you're in the Hydra, you'll have 3 or 4 support champions, or 4 or 5. You'll have 4 or 5 support champions and then like 2 DPSers, like 4 supports, 2 DPSers. So there's less numeric demand for damage dealers. So if you're not in that top 10 or 15 of damage dealers as far as like nuking and damage capability, you've really got to bring something special to the table, at least like block revive or something, or you're just not going to slide up the board. So here's the thing with what I think would be some good changes to her that would, like not to make her a top 5 champion in raid. I understand that not every fragment event can be godly, like I said, but just something that would make her a little bit more sought after. So I would either increase her multipliers a little bit to make her do a little bit more damage. I think maybe like increase her damage output like 15-20%, something like that, and then leave her alone besides that. Or if you're not gonna help her compete a little bit closer to some of the top nukers in the game, she needs something special in her kit. I actually like the A1. Giants within mythology and lore, giants typically, you know, do like the blunt force or like the stunning. They pound the ground and stun enemies and stuff. So having stun on the A1 I think is really cool. It's a little bit interesting that she has an axe. Typically you think of like giants with this big like club or something, but I do like thematically the A1, the multi-hitter with some CC and some defense break. I like the A1. They don't really need to change that at all. The A2 is a little bit interesting. I don't know why it's defense break. You're already getting defense break on the A1. So I think the A2, if you're going to adjust something, this is where to do it. And giants, when you think of giants, you typically think of like chaos, you know, in terms of the 2 spectrums, like chaos and order. Giants are usually towards the chaos. They don't ever really have allegiance. And that also checks out with barbarians. Typically barbarians are like allegiance to nobody. We do our own thing. We'll attack anybody, and we have no allegiance to anything. So I think that something chaotic with the A2 here would be good. Remove the defense break and replace it with something else. Maybe something like Contra. You know how Contra has that ability where she just does a bunch of craziness, like on the ability right here, attack all enemies and block buffs, attack down, speed down, weaken, attack, heal reduction. It's just a bunch of craziness going on. Something similar to that might be fun on Jetni. Just have like a chaotic A2 that does something crazy and can really swing the battlefield with some RNG or something. I mean, just having an AoE defense break is kind of meh when you've already got defense break on the A1. So I think the A2 is where it's at in terms of adjusting things. The A3 is mostly fine. Like, you get an extra turn if Allsgore is on the team, but even if Allsgore is not on the team, you're not flat out wasting your turn because you do get the AoE multi-hitter while also buffing yourself before the attack, which is nice. It's a 4-turn cooldown, which is a little bit rough, but it's a 4-turn cooldown because of the extra turn mechanic baked in there. So, like, I'm mostly okay with it. I would just make it hit a little bit harder. That's all. And then the passive, inflict 20% more damage under shields. And then we'll also ignore shields. Again, I'm mostly okay with that, but I would have a little bit more fun with the passive. Like, what's something chaotic? Maybe like every hit has a 5 to 10% chance of placing a fear, just a normal fear, not a true fear. You know, giants instill fear. Maybe add like a 5 to 10% chance of placing fear on any opponent that she hits or something. That would make her a lot more interesting and give her a little bit more CC and make her a little bit more terrifying. So like maybe something like that, but really I think the main problem is the A2. I like the ignore defense, but the like something besides defense break just to make her more fun and spice things up, because right now she doesn't bring anything special to the game. There is nothing like super unique, like, I mean, ignoring defense and shield and crit rate and crit damage and defense break on 2 different abilities. The stun on the A1 is definitely nice, but I would adjust the A2, or I would make her multipliers hit a little bit harder. So yeah, I don't think the consensus on her is gonna change much. I think she's gonna be one of those middling fragment fusion champions that kind of depends on each person's account, where you're gonna have most people thinking she's either decent or meh, and it's just gonna be one of those normal fragment events that it's gonna depend on each person's account on whether you should really go for her or not. But I will say I don't think you need to feel bad about skipping her. Like there's nothing special like Razer. Like there's nothing crazy where you're like, ooh, they're a super unique champion that I don't want to miss out. She's just kind of a hybrid damage dealer that will be replaceable within the scheme of Raid. But also remember, champions do get adjusted. Like Draco was trash for a long time and then got buffed. Champions like Baron was trash for a long time and then got buffed and became a top tier DPS. So that caveat is worth it. They end up balancing about maybe on average 3 champions a month. So like 30 to 35 champions a year that get adjusted. So just keep that in mind that she could get adjusted, she could get buffed, and she could end up being a sought after champion. And she is Spirit Affinity, and we don't have a plethora of Spirit Affinity damage dealers running around. So that is also the case for making sure to not miss out on her fragments. So that is my thoughts so far within the first few hours on when I can actually speak publicly about Jetni based on my testing and playing around with her and building her and all of that. Now, as we get closer to Wednesday and Thursday, when the fragment events are launching and kicking off, I will definitely talk about in one of my morning daily raid wrap-up videos. I'll give you my final verdict. We'll do a little bit more community polling. I'll touch base with more creators, and I will definitely keep you in the loop here on the channel on the final, like, should you or shouldn't you, and who she makes sense for and all that. But I think mostly by now that the vast majority of you are gonna kind of be able to get to a headspace where you either decide to go after it or not go after it. And I will say that if you're ever gonna skip one, I could see the justification being made here if you're at least like mid-game. I don't think she's going to like drastically change your account, maybe like a Python or a Mighty Uko or one of these super impactful support champions, or like a Nishok who really unlocks a lot of special damage dealing stuff. I think she's just going to be kind of a normal, decent damage dealer. So there we have it. Remember to subscribe on your way out if you enjoy daily Raid Shadow Legends content, and I will link down below to the relevant web articles like the one that Cold Brew did and the event tier list that I was talking about, or like the event champions tier list that I was talking about in this video, and would love to hear your thoughts below down as well as we get closer to the Jetni fragment event kicking off. I appreciate all of you. Thanks for watching. Have a great rest of your day. Peace.